Hey everybody, and welcome to Dennis from Scratch. Today I'm going to show you how to make some French toast with sautéed apples. To start off, I'm just going to preheat the oven real quick. This is going to help keep our French toast warm while we're making the other batches, because we're going to make 2 batches of French toast. I'm just going to preheat it to like 250. Doesn't really matter what you set it to. And first I'm going to start with the apples. So first we're just going to start slicing up these apples a little bit. And we're going to cut these into 1/2-inch cubes. So once we just get the apple off the core there, I'm going to turn the apple sideways and slice some small strips right here. Turn that. And we're going to slice them kind of small. The smaller you cut them, the faster they're going to cook. But I've found that with making about 2 batches of French toast, these apples should be ready about the same time if you cut them into these 1/2-inch cubes or whatever. Okay, and while we're doing this, we're going to get our pan started over here. So I'm going to set this to kind of a medium-low heat and put a couple tablespoons of butter in the pan to start melting. This will be for our apples. Okay, and we'll finish this other apple. I like to take the stems off before I cut them. Just makes it a little easier. I don't have to worry about that getting in my way. And I'm always going to cut these apples with this face down so that it's more secure. It's not rolling around, because if I have it up here, then it's not secure. But if it's on the ground, it's much better. And I'm going to use 2 medium apples for this. You can also use some small apples. I would say about 3 small apples would work. But these are a little bit on the larger side, kind of a medium-large apple, so 2 is fine. Okay, so then I'm just going to, I don't need to wait for the rest of it to melt. I just don't want any of the apples to be directly on the pan without butter, because the butter is going to keep them from burning a little bit. They'll caramelize instead of getting all black and whatnot. So I've got my apples in there, my butter in there. I'm going to sprinkle this with some cinnamon, just enough to dust to the top. If you like cinnamon, you can add a little bit more. That's enough right there. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit, because I find about medium is where my stove will take to cook the apples in time for the French toast, because we want it all to kind of be done at the same time. Okay, so now I'm going to start over here with my French toast. I've got 6 pieces of bread right here. 4 to 6 pieces, which you'll need, because I'm using 3 eggs. If you find that you don't have enough egg batter, you can always just crack more eggs. But we're going to start here, actually using this bowl. I find it works best to use a flat-bottomed bowl, but if you don't have a flat-bottomed bowl, that's fine too. Just something that has a base that's large enough that you can get the bread into in a minute. I'm just scrambling these up with a fork here. Doesn't need to be very whipped, just as long as they're lightly scrambled, that's fine. I'm going to turn my griddle on over here, and I'm going to do a medium heat. This stove, or this burner in particular, I know is very hot. It burns a lot hotter than it's supposed to, so I'm just going to set it to a medium-low on this, but it's really a medium heat. So if you're cooking at home, just make a medium heat. And I'm going to put about a 1/2 tablespoon of butter and let that melt on my griddle. Make sure you're mixing your apples around so they don't burn and they cook evenly. And then we'll just wait for that butter to melt over here. And while you're waiting for this, it might be a good time to grab a platter to put your French toast on. Like I said, we're going to be keeping it warm in the oven between batches. So I've got a damp tea towel here. You can also use paper towels. Just make them a little damp so that we can, I'll show you when we get to it, but we're going to be wrapping our French toast in it so that it stays moist in the oven while it's staying warm. And this butter is just about ready. Your butter will be ready when there's little bubbles forming on it. We don't want to let the butter burn, but you want to make sure that it gets a little bit of a bubble in there. And that should be about right. So we're going to take our bread. We've just got scrambled eggs right here. We're going to dip it in the batter, flip it over, let the excess drain off. We don't want a bunch of extra egg on there. And just leave it on there. And then just fill up your pan. I'm able to fit 3 pieces of bread over here. I'm just using an Italian loaf of bread, but any bread works. Okay. And now I'm going to take my cinnamon, just dust the tops of those. And I've got some sugar over here. I'm going to sprinkle some of that on top too. Just a little bit. And I'm going to let this cook for about 2 minutes. Now I'm just going to check my French toast. It's been about 2 minutes. Lift it up a little bit. I can see that it's got a couple golden marks on the bottom, which means that it's perfect. It's ready to flip. See, we got the egg cooked, so it's dry to the touch. Just be careful when it's going to be hot. And then we got the little golden marks, so that's what we're looking for. That one could have gone a minute longer, but it's totally fine. Probably not even a full minute. French toast is very forgiving. If you don't get it right, if you don't get it perfectly cooked, it's going to taste about the same, so don't worry too much about it. I'm going to do a little more sugar on these. And cinnamon on this side. And let these cook for another 2 minutes. It's been less than 2 minutes, just barely less, but I can see there's a little bit of smoke starting to come off my pan. So that's a sign that this is done. I'm going to turn that off and remove it from heat for a minute. Just to make sure my pan doesn't get too hot. And now I'm going to flip these one last time, just for a couple seconds each, just to kind of melt that sugar that we put on. And then I'm going to put them inside of my damp towel. I'm just going to kind of wrap them up and stick this whole thing in the oven. My apples are looking good. They're going to be done probably just about on time. I'm going to carefully wipe out my pan with a paper towel because I don't want any of that burned stuff to be on my pan for this next batch. I want to start with a fresh pan. So it really helps if you're making a lot of French toast to have a really large griddle that you can do a lot at a time. But if you're just doing a couple batches, then this one works fine. And now I'm going to do another half tablespoon of butter on here. Let that melt. This pan's already hot, so it's going to melt right away and be the right temperature. So we're going to get our French toast going. Let the extra drip off there. And this last one should soak up just about the rest of this egg. Pretty close. Just got a tiny little bit left. But we are done with this. All right, and at this point my apples are starting to get done here. They've lost most of the butter. Most of the butter's been soaked up, and I don't want them to burn. So I'm going to turn them off and just let them sit there. This is ready to flip. Sometimes the pieces get a little bit stuck together because of the egg. You just get your spatula in between those and break them up. And then we're just going to use the rest of our sugar on here. I've got a little bit left, so I'm just going to stick it in the apples too. And our cinnamon. And I find this second side of the French toast, it tends to take a little bit less time to cook than the first side. So we probably don't need to wait for the full 2 minutes. Okay, so while that is finishing up, it's just about done, I'm going to turn off the heat, and the cast iron griddle is going to keep it cooking just till it's done. I'm going to get our other French toast out. We'll just start plating it up over here. And then I'm going to take the apples. I like to stack the French toast in kind of a tower. Just looks nice. I'm going to take our apples here. Just kind of sprinkle them on top. And my counter is clean, so I'm just going to toss these up here. And then just add a little bit of butter. We're going to use some maple syrup, and I got this out way at the beginning so it's a little bit closer to room temperature. Just brings out the flavor a little better if your maple syrup is slightly warm or room temperature rather than being cold. And we put some sugar on the French toast, so we don't need a whole lot of syrup. Just a little bit to sweeten and flavor it. And then I like to just do a little cinnamon on top just to make it look nice. And there you go. And that's it. This is just the right amount for breakfast. If you're having French toast for dinner, it's going to be probably a little bit light, is what I found, but it's 2 plates of French toast.